The other thing that I worry about is the level of redundancies within the grid itself, because it looks like it's a single point failure. Just one failure wipes off everything. So I do not see that much redundancy in the design of the grid that says to be, let's say we have 100 sparing philosophy. What that simply means we have 100% working and 100% not working, or 50%, 50%, meaning worst come to worst, if you take one out, one of the sources out, maybe by either by maybe some sort of process offset, that we can then have the other half still powering the country. It looks like a single point failure. Once that happens, every other, sort of consumer will feel the effects. So I think that's some of the ways. Now, if you look at the new Electricity Act, it has given the subnationals the power to go ahead and create their own energy. It's allowed them to distribute it. And so what and in fact, I learned some states now have their own sort of laws governing how they want to do their own internal distribution. So I think that's the starting point, because what you essentially want to do is to decentralize the grid. Decentralize the grid from a single point failure and make sure that we have multiple modes of energy. Again, energy options which will underpin the tenets of energy security, which is energy availability, energy affordability, and energy accessibility. The other thing is, then the question is, what is the big role of renewable energy in all of these? And for me, that's a really important conversation, because whilst people argue that renewable energy is going to be either the fossil energy or renewable energy, I beg to differ, because when you hear the term just energy transition, it therefore means that you're looking at a transition that is sustainable, a transition that it's been redesigned to solve a particular problem, and a transition that leverages what you have to go to what you need. So let's put that in context. If you're looking at from an economic standpoint, we do have gas, yeah, and we're currently using it to power. But what is our problem? Our biggest challenge at the moment is actually making sure that we feed the decentralized grid points. And with that, we can have a design that leverages both the advantages of the central grid, and which is able to take a lot of power demand, and the advantages of the renewable energy, which is able to cater for the decentralized grids that are very low in demand. For example, renewable energy could power some of the rural areas. We have a lot of renewable energy sources there, and they are not connected to the grid, and their power demand is not as high as those that are connected to the central grid. These are some of the ways. So I'm thinking not demonizing the fossil energy and sort of praising the renewable energy, but making them work in harmony is going to be the key thing. The government has their own role to play, making sure that they put out fiscal incentives to make sure that renewable energy is attractive for consumption. That's really key. I tell you what's going on in Ghana, for example. Because of how expensive the solar energy is, a lot of people cannot afford it. So they have an energy fund that is in Ghana. And what that means is, if you're a worker and you have a certain level of salary, you can go ahead and get that energy bank to give you some money, which will be put forward towards buying solar panels and the inverter options. And then that is taken from your salary at a very low rate until you completely pay off the money. That way, Ghanaians can go in and get that money, and they, so basically anyone working in Ghana can have access to start putting up the solar panels without necessarily breaking the bank, because the government has brought in institutions that would put up this special funding arrangement to deepen the consumption of renewable energy. So imagine if someone came to you with that offer and said, look, Vivian, you're going to be paying back 30,000 naira a month for the next 2 years, but we'll give you the upfront cost. And you set up your renewable energy enough to give you enough energy to at least go on and buffer your energy expenses, or at least have some more reliable form of energy when the central grid is off, you would jump at it most definitely, because I mean, it looks affordable at least for the middle class, if there's anything like that in Nigeria. So it's we need to think about this from a more holistic standpoint. We need to think about it that, okay, what are the frictional points along the value chain? How do we overcome? The first frictional point for renewable energy is the upfront cost. The running cost is low, but the upfront cost, and how do we overcome this? That's where the government needs to bring in those funding options. A lot of those CBN funds that were allocated, I think 10 billion per project for projects that never happened in the gas sector, could have been given to consumers, and the money deducted at source, and they could leverage this to put on the renewable energy infrastructure at the household levels, and that will give us a variety of options. In fact, if we do that in Ghana today, the cost of the consumption data for PMS is dropping, because a lot of the households are turning to renewable energy. So I mean, these are some of the imperatives. Of course, we need to make sure that some of those equipments that are being brought in, we remove some of the tariffs on them to make them cheaper, and then we do knowledge transfer. What I see here is that we import a lot of technologies. We're not bringing in knowledge transfer. We're not making sure that it reflects in our GDP. So the things that we are consuming, how much are we producing? So renewable energy gives us a lot of opportunities to industrialize our nation, and not just to enhance energy security.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Wisdom. And I'd like us to look at this whole band system thing, this band A, band B, band this, band that. How does the band system, how does it even impact investment, in renewable energy this time around? And what adjustments could be made to make it more attractive?
All right, so we currently have a band system at the moment, and the band system basically says those that are able to get, I think, for the most part, 20 to 24 hours of light should be on band A, and that's that's on the premise that those guys get at least 60% of the light electricity supply. Yes, I mean, at the moment, if you compare that to the cost of running your petrol or diesel engines, it still makes a lot of sense. However, that is on the premise that the distribution companies are ethical, because I have seen situations where some of those companies put you on band A, but you get, perpetually, you get less than even 10 hours of light. I have seen that happen without naming the companies. And the second thing that we need to know is, when we look at energy or payment for anything, there are only two ways to pay for it. Either the government pay for it or consumers pay for it. When it comes to the government, that's subsidies, or they're probably getting a loan, or they're owing a debt. When it comes to consumers, there's a lot more you need to do when you're consumer facing. You need to give them absolute value for money. And giving the consumer absolute value for money means that they are definitely sure that whatever they're paying is worth it. And one of those things is, the government needs to understand is, how well are they, sort of monitoring, deepening the monitoring and reporting of all the enforcements across these various bands. How do I ensure that someone that was legitimately on band A, because it was being given that amount of electricity, if it falls on 1 month, can go back to a lower band where they truly belong, and if it gets better, can go back up? So what is the review mechanism? And how well are we monitoring the discourse to make sure that that review happens? Because it looks like once you've gone into band A, come what may, even if they don't keep to that bargain or the contract in band a lot of companies just leave you there. And I'm talking with empirical data. Now, back to your question of how does that affect investment? Of course, when we have customer satisfaction, people would tend to pay for the energy and not steal the energy. And then the people that are investing know that it's a great return on the investment. Because at the moment, if you look at the electricity sector, as a consumer of gas, The electricity sector owes the biggest debts to the gas sector, and that's sacrosanct. Why is that the case? Because kind of on a legacy basis, we have had consumers owe debts. We've had consumers not pay. We've also had consumers steal electricity. So the question I'm going to ask is, how do we implement the entire ban thing? How do we do the monitoring and the reporting in such a way that consumers will feel satisfied to pay on time? That will reduce that sort of debt ratio month or year basis, and then it will become attractive to investors to come into that sector, because those are the indicators that the investors are looking at, not just your turnover, not just your profit, but what is the share of your losses as a percentage of your entire fund. That's what they're looking at to judge the attractiveness of the investments.
All right, now as we slowly wrap this up, Wisdom, you remember that former President Goodluck Jonathan unbundled the power sector years ago. It was called privatization. I don't know if you think that was a good or bad thing. I would like for you to answer that, and also if you will make recommendations for more reforms in that sector as we wrap this segment up.
All right, thank you. I think privatization is always a good thing, because the government, the role of the government in a capitalist economy should be to create enablers and then hand that enablers, to the private sector, who would then go on to do the investment. And so I think it's a good thing. It's just when we do privatization, it doesn't mean that the government take a complete backseat. It means that they go and do some oversight functions to make sure that that sector is actively working the way it's supposed to work. In terms of reforms, what I would say is we need to start looking at accountability in terms of, okay, how are they implementing the ban system from the DISCO's perspective? How is that being implemented? The second thing is this ban system just to enhance cost recovery, or is it actually so that there's a broader implication in terms of having more money to be able to do facility upgrades? A lot of the issues that we are having with some of these blackouts that we have is because some of our equipment are obsolete. And I'm talking even from the distribution standpoint. So if some of that money cascades from the distribution to the transmission to the production, we can then begin to plan a phasal upgrade of our facilities. And in which case, Nigerians deserve to know, how far have you gone? Where are you? How much percentage of equipment have you begun to upgrade? Because we cannot continue to exist with some of these obsolete equipment and then expect the improved supply of electricity for the next 10 years. So this is something the government needs to do. We're making a lot of money, but is there a correlation between that income and the upgrades that are required to sustain energy supply for the future?
All right, Dr. Enang, I just like to ask you this. This has been some talk between me and Sarah. Do you believe in this band A, band B, band C, band D thing? Don't you think that in the eyes of under the Constitution, all Nigerians are equal? So segregating Nigerians to band A, band B shouldn't even happen in the first place. What's your thought on that?
I think the broader picture is going to be they're going to increase all the bands altogether, ultimately. What you'd find is that this is just a litmus test to see how much and how far can we go, how much can we do and how far can we go with the band system in terms of the overall sustainability of the sector, and how much can we enhance the attractiveness. And also, it's been done that way to say, okay, if you want more money from the various people at the other bands, then prove to us that you can enhance their electricity supply. And so, that's kind of the challenge underneath the entire band system. But again, it is a way that has been crafted to solve the problems that we had, which is the debt problem, and the recovery cost problem, and also the fact that we needed to enhance the infrastructure if we need to sustain our energy supply for the future.
So would you say, you said it was a litmus test, so would you say it worked?
It's still a work in progress because, as I said, the real litmus test is down to the ethics of the distribution companies. Some distribution companies have stood tall amid the test, and some have actually fallen. And we've read in the papers where some people were arbitrarily put on the bans, even when they don't have that level of supply. So a lot needs to be done. I think the crux of Nigeria's policy implementation has to be the monitoring, evaluation, and reporting of these of how we're getting on with the implementation, and not just the policy or to roll out the blanket implementation.
All right, this is a very safe place for us to land. Thank you so much, Dr. Wisdom Enang, for your very illuminating contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. Do enjoy your morning.
You too.